Recently, there has been a flurry of articles in respected journals with titles such as "Women Will Rule the World," with the tagline, "Men were the main victims of the recession. The recovery will be female." And the provocative Atlantic article, "The End of Men," which poses the question, what if modern post-industrial society is simply better suited to women? So, our panelists, do you think women are reaching a turning point where maybe things will get easier for women to grow businesses? Julie, would you like to start?
Sure. There's no question that women today are starting businesses at a faster rate than men. And that starting your own business actually is frequently a very important lifestyle choice. I actually started my own business when I had my first child, so I could stay in one room and see the nanny in the other room. For a couple of years, it worked pretty well for me. But I had a couple issues, which is I didn't have the entrepreneurial training and really didn't set it up right. And I also really didn't have a big vision. I just wanted it to be a lifestyle choice. And so I think that we're in an interesting phase in the world where we can start, also this sort of, working remotely and being able to do business from home is certainly exploding. And I think that it's changing what's possible for women in their lifestyles. And so I certainly think for that reason, it is a new day. I still think there's a place for men, though. Of course. Yes.
I've had discussions about that before as to whether or not the women were going to be the ones re-stimulating the economy. And looking at what's happened, if you think about from one perspective, one way we could rebuild, it really is from the ground up, and it's from doing more with less. And as women, especially when you're looking at financing for a business, we have to do more with less. It's just a fact. So we've learned to be scrappy. We've learned to team up. We've gotten creative with ideas. And sometimes, a lot of times, we've probably leaned on the men in our lives to help make it happen. So while I appreciate the target of that and the passion behind that, I think that it can be just as destructive to kind of put those articles out there. Appreciate the opinion, but recognizing that without harmony, whether it's with women working with women, women working with men, men with men, we're all in trouble. But go women because we're scrappy.
So I actually tend to grade in like that Atlantic title, at least. There were some good points on the article, but I think that if we launch sort of a gender war, we're going to go nowhere. I think the question or what we should be talking about is how do we include women in the future? And everyone's aware and knows that to get out of the recession we're in right now, innovation is going to have to be the key player, and innovation's always been the key player when it comes to GDP growth. So the question is, how do we innovate ourselves out of this? And research has shown that the best innovation comes from diverse teams and has to include more than just one group of people. So I think it is all about inclusion. On a bigger scale, I do feel like I read somewhere that this is going to be the century of women, or the next 20 years or so. I think even Kaufman has defined the next 10 years as the decade of women entrepreneurs. I do think there is a shift that is happening. In particular, we see it with our work with the younger girls. I have to call them, even though they're probably mid-20s to 30s, but everything's relative. I think that at least I see up to kind of my generation that there's still a lot of biases, even myself. I mean, I found myself one day showing my son something, kind of was like a woman in scrubs as a toy, and I said, and this is the nurse, and my husband said, no, it's the doctor. So even ourselves, we have kind of hidden biases that I think are ruling us, but I'm seeing the new generation coming at least out of school with these faces of like, well, what are the barriers? We didn't even know there were barriers. They do feel like everything is open, and the self-confidence that we see is a big part of why businesses don't grow. I mean, it is true. I mean, women do start more businesses than men, but on the big majority, they are smaller businesses with less vision and growth. And I think a big portion or a big cause to that is our upbringing. We were brought up to be a bit less self-confident than men. I mean, there is the infrastructure part of it as well, VCs and so on. There's a lot of parameters that play into key here, but in general, self-confidence is a key player in the new generation. I don't see it. I see them, at least the graduates we work a lot with graduates from Stanford and Berkeley and women entrepreneurs who really are thinking bigger and less intimidated by what it takes to grow big. So I'm very optimistic.
Thank you.
Well, I think everything in today's economy sort of demands that we all wear our women thinking caps, men and women, and it's mostly the change in approach, right from transformational leadership. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Daniel Pink's book, The Free Agent Economy or A Whole New Mind. All of them kind of talk about just the skills and the aptitudes that are needed for today's economy, such as inventiveness, empathy, meaning, creating story, design. All of those aptitudes tend to come intrinsically and more naturally to women, and I think that really sort of puts us in a position to capitalize on what's happening with our economy, and just using what comes to us naturally to create businesses that work for us both personally and professionally.
But let's be clear, women have not in fact arrived and gotten to the top of the mountain. We're not the king of the mountain. Women are absolutely underrepresented grossly in the Fortune 500 CEOs, C-suites, as well as the boards of directors, and women are absolutely not faring well compared to men in terms of economics. So there are a lot of good things, but we can't rest on our laurels just because we've got more women slaving away in the workforce.
Well, that brings me to my next question, which is about venture capitalists and funding. And we all know that the majority of venture capitalists and angel investors are men. There's no doubt about it. And more men get funding than women. That's a fact too. And so I'm wondering, do we all have to wait till there's a majority of women, angel investors, and venture capitalists until women can get funding? What do you think about it? Allie, go ahead.
This question gave me goosebumps. I had this vision that just flashed in my head, and actually I was talking in the back with Lori Morgan, somewhere back there, and I said, I'm doing some work right now for women. I'm doing some recruiting work, and I'm bringing her a lot of salespeople, and she said to me, I've never seen so many women sales candidates presented to me for hiring. I said, oh, I'm tied in with a lot of women, I'll get you some guys too. But what I was thinking about the venture capital is that if the guys who are there now are used to, being bros with their bros, it's natural that they're gonna help them out along the way. However, I was talking with this other woman here, and she was one of the first, in the switch in the 70s, women going into the workforce, and she was alone. She was the lone woman, the lone ranger, and by being there, much like with these venture capital firms, that's what it takes. It takes the plant. We got to get them in. And once they're in, I think there's been so much messaging that's been going on that's positive about women supporting women, that it's my belief and my, prayer that that's what's going to happen. The women that are in there are looking out for the women businesses that are being started, being encouraged by technology companies, because that is high growth and that is something that venture capitalists are interested in making money off of. So my thought is we don't need to have the entire venture capital firm be women, although it would be great to see one of those or a few of those. But as long as we do have women, which we do, we're going to get there. She's proof, living proof that, things change. They take time. But with the internet and with our messaging and viral videos, the message is getting farther and wider. And I think it's going to happen sooner than not.
I have an idea. Why don't you contact some of those big venture capital firms and offer to recruit some women in?
Okay.
What do you think? Anyone